Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about confidence. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how can I have confidence have the confidence to switch to another company when I feel I haven't done much work in my current company? Well, it's difficult. It's difficult with confidence because it's something that you either have it or you don't. You can develop it, but it's not something that is. There's no magical phrase that I can tell you that is going to most likely give you confidence. All I can really do is to build up the arguments for you and then let your own personal reflections maybe fill in whatever is missing. So if you haven't, I'm not 100% sure what you mean, but you haven't done much work in your current company. Maybe you haven't been there for a long time. Maybe you feel like you're not so good at software development. Maybe you're feeling like there's a lot of risk because moving to another company is, maybe you're used to working in this company and you're not 100% sure how you're going to do in another company. All I can tell you is that the demand for software developers that have experience is fairly high. So if you've done any type of work, there is a good chance that people will at the very least hear you out. It's a little bit more difficult for people who have never had their first job or who have less than a year or something. I mean, we're talking not that much experience, but if you have a bit of experience, I don't think you have to be so afraid that there's going to be an issue, because if you think about it rationally, you have a job right now, which means that, well, you're making money, you're being able to support yourself, I hope. So what is the risk in applying for a job somewhere else? My guess is that it might be the emotional backlash that you can feel from, say, being rejected. And that is one of those things which is, what is it they say? The Navy SEALs, embrace the suck. Like, it's sort of, it's a crude way of saying it, but it is true. Some things are sucky. They suck and they suck and they suck. And the only thing that I can tell you is that whenever I have a situation that I feel is really, really sucky and I don't really want to do it, I always just ask myself, okay, what are the consequences of not doing this thing? And if I find that it's more horrible for me to stay, as I like to say, you always only have one choice: either you sit and wait, or you move. And if sitting and waiting is worse than the unknown, because that is usually what people like, we do this thing, we humans, we are scared of the unknown because our mind starts imagining how things can go bad and like how all these things can happen, etc., etc. But if you're really honest with yourself, the only real thing that you're usually scared of is that all these things could happen, but you're actually just scared of that something is unknown to you. You don't know how things are going to go, and you have this need usually to convince yourself that there's a sure thing, this is going to work out, etc., etc. But that is a mental trick in of itself, as I like to tell people who ask me a lot about this, like, oh, should I go to this new company because I'm more stable in this company, and so forth and so forth. And I go, it really comes down to what do you value, because you can get fired right here, right now. It's probably not gonna happen, I hope, at the very least for you, for everybody. That would be horrible, but it could. Just as, like, I remember having a conversation with my friend about this whole COVID thing. He was trying to see, is he gonna get vaccinated, is he not gonna get vaccinated? And I said, if you have these doubts about vaccinations and so forth, then just look at the numbers. And he goes, well, what do you mean? Look at the deaths related and complications related to taking the vaccines and the deaths related to getting the virus. And look at the age range, because the statistics are different for every age group. And just crunch the numbers. Because what's happening with you is that you are emotionally convincing yourself that there is a risk here, but you haven't actually checked what the risk is. You could, we were eating food at the time. You didn't see that piece of chicken you just put in your mouth? That could strangle you right now. You could choke on that thing. You could die, because I'm for some reason not able to do the Heimlich or something like that. You could die from just eating that food. So are you going to crunch the numbers on how long are you going to make it without food versus eating food ever again? It's in your brain. Everything is a chance. All things. are like unknown to you. If you really come down to it, you're just imagining that there are things that are not unknown to you. And so if you think about it that way, that's what it really comes down to. What is the risk of you trying a little bit? And I will argue that you have no risk here apart from emotional backlash. And that is something that I can't really help you with, because that's sort of part of, well, I suppose growing up and getting older. You have to accept sometimes that you're not as great as you wanted to be, or you're not this or that. And getting through that is part of it. Getting confidence is one part about being successful, but it's also about hitting a wall and overcoming it, if that makes sense. So in my opinion, that doesn't you don't really have you have no other real problem here apart from your emotional state. And as I said, if you rationalize it, as I just said, which is very, very difficult, because the emotions are more powerful than rational thinking in many cases. But if you do it, it should help you mitigate a little bit of that fear. And especially that one when I was telling you that if you think about it, trying to get another job when you already have a job is really no risk for you, or there's very little risk that you're actually doing. You're taking on almost nothing, I would say. And so that's what I suggest that you do. So what I want you to take away from this is that it doesn't really matter so much if you're not so experienced or if you're this or that. If you already feel like you want to switch your company, the only thing you can really do is to try and do it and see how it goes. And think about it this way: you already have a job now, which immediately puts you higher up than all the times you tried to do it when you were a junior. Think about that. If you're a junior software developer doing the same thing, it's probably at least as hard, if not harder, to get another job. And so even if you have worked just a little while in your current company, going to another job it might be a little bit simpler at the very least. And you can, at worst, you're just going to get a no from the companies that you apply to. And then you'll figure out that, well, maybe I need to actually put some more work into this whole programming thing in order to actually be able to move somewhere else. And as I said, usually I find it very useful to think in these terms where, alright, what is the cost of being where I am? How does this thing make me feel versus how, like this unknown thing, like what is gonna happen if I try to do something different and so forth. And trust me when I say this, in a low risk situation where you can basically try this at no cost, I would always go with try it out, see what happens, because there's no cost to you. It would be a whole different ball game if the cost of trying could potentially, imagine those people who have to, who are going to start their own business or do something very risky, where if this doesn't work out, they can basically lose everything that they have. That's to me a more risky situation. You have an almost luxury decision in front of you, my friend. You just have to. You are already pre-selected. You're a software developer, which is the demand for people like you is super, super high. You already have a job, which means that the only thing you have to do is to apply for another job. And the worst thing that can happen is that you get a no. Nothing else changes. Have a great day.